This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
This morning. Welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. I know we're creeping into this 10 o'clock hour, but you don't watch nothing. Even I was tuned into the radio listening to BPL because when my power went off yesterday, and I think it went off a day before, I in a state of confusion, but if you're watching this show on the Facebook feed, you could see what BPL did to me this weekend. I have cut my hair. I cut the locks off. I had to take them off. Fortunately, I was able to do it before the power went off. Look at my luck. Look at my luck. But it is so hot that I had to take... See, sometimes when you can't control situations and other things, you realize the only thing you could control is yourself. Right? So I was sitting there. It was 119 degrees in the heat index. The bucket I put the ice in melt, the ice walk away, say this don't make no sense. And all I could do was cut my hair. And I want to encourage all of y'all, especially my women folk, them. I want to encourage you to ponder upon this strategy this summer. Cut it off. Just cut it off. Now, first of all, you're going to have a conversation with your hairstylist, right? Like recently I lost a therapist. No fault of my own, and like a physical therapist. And it's like a breakup. It's like my heart is broken because I'm no longer able to see my physical therapist. It's a real relationship. She's like a significant other to me, And so before you go and you cut your hair off, you got two significant others you got to talk to. You got to talk to your partner. Now, women, I need you to understand this. Yes, it is your head. It is your hair. It is your body. It is your choice, right? We could talk about that plenty in the upcoming weeks. It's your body and your choice. But before you cut your hair off, you go talk to that man or woman, significant other, because it could be a shock. They're going to love you anyway, And if they don't love you anyway, that's a good indicator. It's time for you to wrap them up and send them back to their mommy. But cut it. And talk to your hairstylist first. Don't end on bad terms with your hairstylist. I'm going to tell you why. Your hair could grow back and you're going to need them. In the winter, your hair is going to grow back and you're going to need your hairstylist. But explain to your hairstylist for the summer, we have to break up. Call it a temporary separation. Tell them BPL caused it. Tell them it was an act of God. And even the courts cannot intervene. But you have to take some time apart from each other. Please consider cutting your hair this summer. I see a lot of y'all on the road, hot, mad. It's the heat. Also, y'all are going to need y'all to stop making fun of our lace front and weave wearing friends when you see them tapping the top of their heads. Here's what I learned this weekend. I learned that there are pressure points on the scalp. Pressure points that can provide relief if stimulated properly. So while we here sort of casting shade at the women who wear weaves and lace front in the middle of the summer in 135 degrees heat because they tap in their head, that's actually a stress release activity. It's a stress reliever. So you don't mess with them women when they're doing that. Let them relieve their stress and have a good day. Now, I hope you guys had a great weekend. It is Monday the 26th of July, and you are on the clock with Erin Greene. On the clock, we engage organizations, institutions, social and cultural leaders, and ordinary people to better understand the impact of public policy, private sector development, and emerging social and consumer trends. Today's show is brought to you by the Department of Inland revenue. And we're having two conversations today. We're delving into a bit of what's in the news. There have been new COVID protocols and restrictions. I just want to run through them quickly. I think I've talked about BPL a lot so far, but I will say to BPL, we're also very concerned, not just about the outages, scheduled and unscheduled, but we're concerned about hurricane preparation, right? Like hurricane prep, tree trimming, maintenance of trees. We are concerned about the union woes. Somebody told us 14 good days, but I figure when the power went out, the alarm clock reset itself. So I don't know where we are in the countdown with that. And of course, every time we talk about BPL, we have to ask the question, is there somewhere that I can find a formal briefing or statement on the 2018 fire and the conclusion of the investigation into the fire? I don't want you all to think that we forgot. It's easy to forget things, though, when you're suffering from heat stroke and heat exhaustion, because you started cooking dinner, but you have an electric stove. And so you couldn't finish cooking dinner, which meant you were left in your house in the heat to eat your feelings because you couldn't finish cooking dinner. I know I done talked about 3 people this Sunday that had heat exhaustion, legit heat exhaustion, because they were not prepared for the power outage. They was cooking dinner. They had their house all hot up because they figured shortly after they would begin that period of super cooling. That's why we call it in my house, super cooling. That's what we have to do after we turn the oven off on a Sunday. Yeah. I'm also hitting that age, right? I'm getting close to menopause, right? And so all of this is not the sun. Like I was going to sue the sun, and I know a lot of y'all was going to sue the sun too. I heard y'all, I saw y'all on social media complaining about the heat, right? I was going to sue the sun, and then I realized, Erin, you're getting old. And a part of this may just be you. You can't be mad at nobody but yourself and nature. And so I am not mad at anybody. Let me say good morning to my guest from the Organization for Responsible Government, that's ORG, Ms. Tiffany A. Bain.
Good morning, Bahamas.
How are you?
I am also very upset with the sun, but I will visit your perspective and check in with myself.
Yeah, because normally, you see, we have this habit of thinking that people cause us to feel things.
I'm pretty sure the sun is causing me to feel these things.
No.
I was in the air-conditioned office and I was fine, and I step outside and I was angry at everybody, and I did not do this. It was definitely the sun.
But I mean, obviously it was you. It's you. It can't be the sun.
I was fine on the inside.
So I tell people, like people in the Bahamas complain about the heat, and I tell them, look here, I was supposed to be born in Africa, like in the center where the sun is vacation. Right? The sun lives here at vacations in the center of Africa. But my mother was in the Bahamas at the time, and I felt the appropriate thing was to stay with her for this momentous occasion, right?
And I struggle with my ancestry for this reason, because this sun, I could not have been from the places where this sun belongs. And also, this can't be the same sun I had when I was a child. I remember going outside and staying outside all day. I can't walk to the car. Like, I have to hype myself up and wait until the air conditioner is like inside my body before I can leave the car to go to the inside. This is not the same sun.
I mean, and it isn't, right? It's not the same sun, but more importantly, it's not the same bodies.
Fair.
And that's what it is, right?
Fair.
Our bodies are changing, and children are like Nokia phones. You could drop them, right? You could drop them, and ain't nothing gonna ever happen to you. Drop it on its head, ain't nothing gonna ever happen to it.
Fair.
And so it's 2 things I want to say before we move into the next section of the show. Whoever stopped making Nokia phones, we're very upset at you, because obviously you forgot where we live.
Yeah.
We live in the Bahamas, where every phone needs a flashlight. Also, BPL, I'm not that mad at you. I'm not that mad at you, man. This is historical in its legacy. We can't be upset. But also, I'm also very concerned. Who is it that decided to stop selling all gas stoves in a place with an energy crisis? That knows, they just know they can't keep the electricity on. I'm not sure who decided to do that, but I want you all to reconsider that position tremendously. That not making any sense. But Tiffany, I got a slew of texts here. Let me get to these texts. First text, locks take too long to grow back for that. But you don't know how my hair is grow.
But it's also just hair, because I did the haircut thing maybe 2 months ago. I finished a project, I closed my computer, and I shaved my head. So it's a very liberating experience. I'm here for it. And I also did cut my locks.
Yeah, man. And it's about the choice, knowing that you have autonomy over your hair. Because as a child, I grew up, I had very little to no autonomy over my own hair, control over my own hair. And when I turned 16, I asked my grandmother to take me to the salon. And I came back out of the salon from perm to afro, to Angela Davis afro. And my grandmother was not impressed at all. She's very upset. But she's very calm about it.
Right.
Like, and in that moment, what she showed me was that, like, you have the autonomy to make these decisions, right? I just wish you would have told me first, because you would have walked yourself to the salon. I would have had no part in it,
We had
right?
a conversation about this.
Right, and then that I appreciated. You know, that I appreciated. Another text here. Great show as usual. Why do people wait until they're in the ATM room to decide how much money to withdraw? That is super annoying. Then they take long to come to find out no money on their account. First of all, people is me. Okay? The people you're talking about is me. Here's what you need to understand. Sometimes we're not quite certain how much money is in there. But more importantly, we are considering how much money can I take out and still survive and still do what I need to do. And then some people are waiting for a spirit to talk to us. You know, like, I'm just waiting for the spirit to tell me, listen, just take the whole $100. You'll find the rest of the money when you need it.
Y'all need like an ATM waiting room to make these decisions before you go into the actual ATM room.
Plus, listen, it's a serious critique, you know. I already have to pay to see my money. Don't rush me. Don't rush me. I have to pay to see my money. And if I have to pay to see it, give me some time with it. Let me get the value of this $1.25. There, Bank of the Bahamas, I don't know how much the fees are. I stopped paying attention because you shouldn't be charging me to
get
see
your
my
money?
money at all.
Fair enough.
Another text. Good morning, Erin. There is a broken lamp pole on Prince Charles Drive, just east of Wendy's at Seagrapes Plaza near Nassau East. Only the electrical wires are holding the pole up. Please announce this so that BPL may be aware and replace the pole, as it is a potential danger. Dear BPL and the police, if you are in that area, you please go and check it out, because BPL will take you more seriously than they take the average Bahamian consumer. Now the text, I heard that this son is the son, grandson. This, that new generation son. This, that I ain't taking credit and forgiving debts son. That's what type of son this is. But seriously, this is the climate change and planetary shift son. Yeah. It is different.
The disrespectful son.
Right, and the planet is changing. It didn't tell us, but the most important thing is that we need to understand where we are located. Don't get mad at the sun. Figure out where you are and what you could do about it.
Then I need a summer home outside of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I mean, and this is true. In the same way that people come and have winter homes in the Bahamas, why not have a summer home outside the Caribbean? Another text, can the shirts from the PLP given out on Potter's Key pay my light bill or buy food for me? Miss Greene, when last you heard talks on the ozone layer? That's why sun's so hot. They realize it's nothing they can do, so they are seeking how to live in space. But I tell you what, that is a discussion that is being had, right? And the question of the allocation of Earth's resources, right? And should we be focused on fixing the planet, or should we be allowing people to take funds generated by the general public to fly to the upper limits of the Earth's atmosphere for 11 minutes? I could only think about what we could have spent that $500 billion on.
See, you're you're taking ownership over a decision we had no contribution to. This is the wealthy privilege doing what wealthy privilege does. And we have no control over this. Someone said, well, they can stop supporting Amazon, but Amazon holding us in the dance.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon has effectively created a sort of pseudo monopoly, right? And on the backs of tantamount to like virtually slave labor, right, is very, very problematic. I mean, it's an extreme problem. And people talk about, well, it's their money and they could do what they want with their money. But here's the question. Who pays for the impact of that 11-second flight on the Earth's atmosphere and on the planet? Whose money will pay for that? And in the face of that, here we are in the Bahamas looking at a government that is trying to impose restrictions on unvaccinated people, but cannot provide vaccines or a substantive timeline for vaccines. And here are 4 guys flying off into space, and they're just the passengers. Right. They ain't the people in the plane. Flying off into space for 11 seconds. Imagine how many vaccines could have been purchased and distributed, right? Because it costs money to distribute. With that money.
I think what's really important here is this is actually very reflective of the model of what wealth and what power wants to do. So like whatever those priorities are is where the priorities essentially will rest. And the way that wealth is able to normalize what the next steps end up being, these people have all the power. And then they've established that like, hey, Amazon is a big thing and they can treat their employees really, really poorly. And everybody goes into this space and they create very wealthy owners who can then do whatever they want from the world and nobody else can do a thing about it. And they create these paradigms that we just end up falling into and accept it.
Absolutely. I'm going to paraphrase something that Leon Williams, former CEO of BTC said, right? And he talked about sort of pulling people into the future, right? And the critique that I give successive governments and the political class in this country, the harshest critique is this, is that they have pulled Bahamians dragged them into a future that A, they don't understand, and B, they were not prepared for. And I want to add to that, to satisfy their own comfort, right? They're building their own world. They're using their own experiences and sensibilities without a degree of empathy. And so the only world they prepared or are capable of constructing is the world that they've experienced. And they can't understand anything outside of that. So for instance, we had emergency COVID orders with no consideration for the real lived experience of farmers working with plants and with animals. We have a COVID protocol, we have a food and needs distribution program, but there's been no real consideration for the feminine hygiene needs of half your population, right? Because the people who are making the decisions don't think about these things in the same way.
Which is really just in general, it's really poor policy planning. Because policy engagement, much like the design of any sort of program outside in the world, in business and in social sciences, it should involve all of the stakeholders. Everybody should have something to contribute to this table to represent everybody who a policy essentially will affect. The fact that you feel from, for example, we're looking at the public health protocols that have come through with COVID-19, the fact that there wasn't an economic engagement, a social engagement, an educational engagement at all of these levels is just really poor policy planning. Like that's just what that is.
Absolutely, and now we can see the effects of that, right? The effects of the lack of inclusion at the policy level. Here we are with rumors of a quick election, right? A snap election. But it's obvious that there are no people from the Disaster Recovery Authority sitting.
Who had this conversation with them? And that's a part of the issue. And that's a part of the issue with the ambiguity about whether or not there will be an election, because all of these people should be consulted. Here we have displaced people from Abaco. Here we have displaced people from Grand Bahama. People who have lost documents, have not had the opportunity to recover those. Nobody once said, how will doing this thing affect these groups of people?
And not just Dorian, not just Grand Bahama and Abaco, but all of the people who have been displaced by storms from 2017, right? From the last election.
Like your walk-ins and your Matthews. Yeah. Nobody's, and again, given how difficult it is to recover documents in this country, they haven't even thought about like, how do we then streamline this process? If we're going to still require them to have all of these things, how will we then streamline the process for people that we know exist in this circumstance. That's just poor policy planning. Period.
Absolutely. And those are people that I could at least say that you have a degree of separation from. You don't see them every day. You don't get memos from them on your desk. But what happens now when you get up and tell people, go hurry up and register without consulting the people responsible for the registration process?
Because these people have just been at these offices. And again, I encouraged my son a few months ago to go and register. He's 18. I just told him to do it. Okay. So these people who work at parliamentary registration are pretty much even keel every day. A few people walk in the door, they walk out of the door. That's what they are prepared for every single day. All of a sudden, 200 people and their Grammys show up on their doorstep on a given day, and they weren't prepared for it. Poor policy plan. How do you make a snap announcement for everybody to rush to a place, and the people who are in that place didn't even know they were coming? Who does that?
And poor management. And look here, I could give people in government departments and agencies a hard time, and I would like to say good morning to the hard-working staff at NIB Fox Hill. I mean, hard-working, right? And so there's two things I want to say. Whoever is responsible for the buzzers on the doors at NIB, this is going to be a real simple fix. Fix them. Why would you have government workers, government staff working in those conditions with those buzzers? And anybody who worked there know what I'm talking about. I don't know the plethora of other problems because I don't try to be there long. I could be honest with you. But they working hard. And the point is this, that people are in these spaces working hard, but because of a lack of management, proper management, and a deficiency and dysfunction at the policy creation and implementation stages, people are working unnecessarily hard. They are stressing themselves out. And then they got to go listen to people like Erin Greene who think she's living in 2021 in London, right?
It's the delusion, yeah.
It's because I'm the one who, I'm the one who's deluded.
You're delusional about the optimism of the functionality of things. Yeah.
Right.
No, so this was my issue several weeks ago with the digitization process. Super, super excited about that. They're like, oh, things are going to be online. I went online. I paid for my police record. I was like, okay, so love it, love it. I remember when we were able to do that a couple of years back. Showed up, picked up my police certificate. Great, moved on. So they digitized this process without a public education policy about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and in the policy design, they did not have a conversation about the people at criminal records. I know they did not have this conversation with them because when they rolled it out, it was in the middle of summer when people from CRO do what? Go on vacation. So I apply for my police record online. And I want to say that they have since updated this system, but this is what we talk about poor policy planning. I show up at CRO 2 weeks after I've applied for the certificate because I was like, let this die down a little bit. Get there, the line is wrapped around the building. I have never once gone to CRO for my record, for my police certificate, and had to toe a line of that length. They digitized the system, so people showed up expecting to give their $5 in cash, only to find out you can only pay by digital currency. You can pay by credit card or one of the other subscribers in Nassau. And again, this is something you don't take into consideration. So these people now need to make an additional step of, these are people who don't have the bank accounts. They now have to go and toe a line at the whatever digital subscriber to pay for this thing, to then return to CRO to stand in that line in order to get their dog. Who thought about this?
And I can tell you exactly who thought about it because I am a product of this, right? Because I grew up with a mother, a hardworking mother, a civil servant, who was a high-level civil servant who had a messenger. Right? And the reason she was able to do what she needed to do and take care of us is because in her job function, she had a messenger, right?
Who could mummy for her?
Or could do other tasks and things for the office she don't have to do, right? And that's how these places are functioning, right? So people who have messengers that don't go to the bank and pay this bill, that don't go, they don't have to go to another ministry and stand on a line or wait to see somebody. And because they are so far removed from the process,
right,
they really don't understand.
And you should not be making policy if you've not engaged your stakeholders. Because it's one thing to have a wealth of experience and move yourself up the tier. That's a good thing. But forgetting the people that you will affect when you design a policy is poor policy development, period.
And so the person who goes there with cash doesn't realize on foot, catching a ride, catching a bus during COVID with reduced, not just reduced occupancy on the buses, but reduced number of buses on the road, right? And have to make 2 or 3 trips in one day.
In one day. Not to disregard the fact that at least 50% of the people getting police certificates are for jobs. So a lot of these people don't even have, again, this level of digital access and the ability to take one bus to this place, to the next place. That's like by the time you finish the day, you then spend $15 that you didn't even have to then stand on a line and hope you could get your document, investing 5 hours of your day. Let me tell you something. If I am not on your payroll, the most I'm going to give you on any given line is 30 minutes. Anything beyond that is just disrespectful. I don't work for you. I don't work here.
And there's another point to make. If you're going to have me on a line for more than 30 minutes,
In this sun.
there should be access to a bathroom, right? There should be access to a bathroom available. In fact, in the European Union, right, like office regulations, every 30 to 40 minutes, people, you are obligated to give them a break. They can take a break. Their body needs to move and shift, right? So imagine you're going to a bank where you expected to wait on a line on average 45 minutes. In some instances, the average is an hour.
Right.
With no access to a bathroom at all. But I'm certain in the law, businesses that provide service to the public are supposed to have bathroom access
Right.
to the public.
Would that would just make sense, wouldn't it?
And see, this is a big thing for me because I had a conversation this weekend. I could be honest with you all, I put on my wall without checking the validity of the statement. This is what I put on my wall. It is illegal to urinate in public.
Isn't it?
Well, I would just assume that in 2021, it would be illegal
not
to
have.
urinate in public. Now, I didn't think I'd need to make a distinction between like the outdoors and public,
What?
right?
Oh.
Because a lot of people, particularly men, were explaining to me that they gonna pee out in the public.
That's public.
We gonna pee in the public.
Outdoors is public.
But I mean, here's what I'm saying. There's a
Like downtown
difference.
should not smell like urine.
Right. But my thing is this, you should not walk up to cars and urinate near them or on them.
Right.
You should not walk up to buildings where there are people around, possibly present, or potentially will walk out of an entrance or exit at any time. And you should, but what I found is that men were very concerned that I was trying to prevent them from urinating in the public.
But as a Bahamian,
But see, but here's the thing. It's a policy thing. I think people think I just want to go beat up on men because they want to just urinate everywhere, right? That's not really what it is. But after being confronted by a number of members in the public, right? Like in a parking lot, parking my car, sitting in the car on the side of a building waiting to be called to go inside, and just have men walk up and urinate right there.
because your liberties end at me. Like I
Right.
should not have to have the threat of being violated by you ever.
Right. But here's the thing. What I'm willing to concede that maybe 10% of the men in the conversation brought up. This is really a policy issue. There should be public bathrooms everywhere,
Agreed.
right? And let me tell you why it's a policy issue. We already know that they don't they concern themselves with us and our needs. But with the number of tourists that we expect to visit our country every year, there should be public bathrooms everywhere on the island to accommodate your tourism-based economic policy. You don't have to care about us poor black and conky Joe and white Bahamians at all for this to work. All you have to do is focus on your job and care about people generally,
Right.
to understand that everybody needs to use the bathroom. And with older populations, a number of your tourist customers are older people, they need to use the bathroom when they need to use it. So why are there not public bathrooms available and accessible at all times? And why are there not attendants stationed at these bathrooms with, don't forget this because I found out that y'all always forget this one, with the cleaning utensils and materials necessary to provide the service indicated. See, because my bigger concern, like, I don't think that men should just risk wetting themselves.
Right.
I think that men should focus on their urinary health. Right? We have a trend of urinary health dysfunction and issues in this country.
Fair.
So first, men need to focus on that. Two, we all need to lobby for the government to do its job and ensure that public bathrooms maintained by the state are available, create public-private partnerships to ensure public bathrooms are maintained and available. But more importantly, in your oversight function, enforce the law. Send inspectors out, not just to ensure that the bathrooms are there and are available and working, but to ensure that the staff in the businesses are allowing people to use them.
Shout out to Pompey Square, whose restroom I wish were open. We're downtown. I have my daughter. I took a small group of kids out there to do a scavenger hunt downtown. They were looking at the old sites, expecting to be able to use the restroom at Pompey Square. It was not open.
I mean, it is ridiculous. But it's a policy issue, right? And this is what I wanted men to know. Like anybody, I think they have this idea that when women start talking about things with men, that we just want to beat up on men and show that men are wrong and women are right. But this is a gender policy issue that affects everybody, right? And shows I think it's a great introspection into what gender really is, right?
Right.
Because both men and women are affected by the issue. The issue is a lack of public bathrooms.
Right. But it's one of those inequitable policies that affect women greater because it's less accessible to be able to urinate publicly.
For a woman. Right?
Yeah, it's a little more cumbersome.
Right. It's more accepted so it's more difficult for a woman to be able to do it.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And in the same way and in the same spaces that men do it in.
Right.
Right? That's one thing. Society is more accepting of men doing it.
Correct.
Right? But more importantly, women are violated. Like, I can be honest with you all, I had an incident and I wanted to call the police on this man. And I felt bad for him because here's what I realized. That this boy, and I can use the term respectfully, is ignorant. He was unaware of the impact of his actions on the others and the potential impact on the others around him. He did it with a mannish and a bullyishness, like, I'm going to pull it out and urinate because I need to urinate. Right? There was that. But I don't think there was you're going to look at this because I is man and you is woman. There wasn't that.
Right.
Right? That part of it. But I don't think men understand how this impacts women.
Right.
Particularly
because it's not explicit, but it is implicit.
Right.
It is a part of it.
And young girls, right? But how it impacts women that have survived sexual abuse, street harassment, sexual harassment in public spaces, child sex abuse, child molestation, and sexual predation.
Right.
So y'all don't think about that. Y'all don't think about the little girls and the little boys who have to walk home through the track road, right? And the parents are always telling them, look out for predators, right? Don't get too close to the bush. And this is what they witness when they walk in home.
And an exposed person can be perceived as a threat.
Right.
That is a very reasonable assumption.
Right? Absolutely. Especially for someone who has been a victim to a form of sexual abuse or violence that started off with exposure.
Right.
Right? These are big things.
Yeah.
But listen, it's time for a break.
Okay.
Let's get to this break, and when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about this exciting panel that's coming up. We're going to get back to some more text, and then as we end the show, we're going to run through the new COVID protocols, and just help people understand the policy, why the policy, and what they could do to follow the policy, even in difficult circumstances. Producer, let's go to a break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about the Caribbean United GBV, United Against GBV virtual panel on gender-based violence.
getting ready to make it count this time. Since it's 2021 for your family line, you better get ready. It's about that time. So tell mama to be ready. Tell it to the whole family. The rock the 242. The count depends on you. So tell Ted to go tell below. Mark it down on your calendar. Since it's 2021, this one's for everyone.
In life, there are always challenges. Today, we find ourselves having to be more self-sufficient, socially aware, and technically savvy. At J.S. Johnson, we are committed to our customers by providing cost-effective insurance solutions. No matter what your insurance needs, we will always be here for you. Call 397-2100 or visit jsjohnson.com. J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers, giving you peace of mind.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Good morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. You're on the clock with Erin Greene on this Monday, the 26th of July, and I have a quick message about the Hurricane Supply VAT holiday. The government has made it more affordable for individuals to safeguard their property this hurricane season with the Hurricane Supplies VAT holiday. All qualifying hurricane supplies purchased locally between July 9th and July 31st are zero rated. That means no VAT on those purchases. Visit inlandrevenue.bahamas.gov.bs to obtain a detailed list of supplies. This message is brought to you by the Department of Inland Revenue. That means this is the last working week for that special. Please take advantage of it. Just a quick example as we move into the next section of how this practice of men urinating in public, that's like outside of a public restroom or bathroom, is problematic for people, and in particular other men. So I had a friend who used to smoke the devil's lettuce, that marijuana thing. And one day we were going to the liquor store and he purchased a cigar wrapper for his habit. And I said to him, oh, that's not what you normally buy. And he said, I stopped buying them. He used to buy backwoods, right? And if you know anything about backwoods, they come in a multi-pack. And some establishments would open up the multi-pack and pour the contents in a container, allowing the customer to select a single backwood from that open container. And so when I asked my friend what happened, he said, let me tell you what happened. One day I went to the liquor store and I saw this gentleman by the garbage bin relieving himself, urinating in public. And then he walked into that liquor store in front of me and he purchased a backwood before I could purchase a backwood. And he did not wash his hands. And this was before COVID. There were no hand sanitizers readily available at the door. And he just put his unwashed hand in that container with all of those cigars and touched them up and feel them up and then selected one and left me to choose from those cigars that he had already tainted.
So this was a public health crisis before we even knew it.
Yes, absolutely. Right? And this is why it's a problem. Now, is it illegal? Well, I can tell you two things. There's plenty of things in this town that should be illegal and are not, and there are plenty of things in this town that should not be illegal, and there is.
Correct. Absolutely.
I don't care if it's illegal or not.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. And that's all that men need to consider. Instead of rowing each other, let's lobby for the government to do its job.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Good morning, Miss Bain.
Morning.
Let's get back to business.
Yes.
So, I mean, we were talking policy, right? And talking a bit about policy mistakes and whether people understand some of the soft skills required to create effective and implement effective policy. But now we're going to talk about an event that's happening this evening.
Correct.
At 5 p.m. ECT, that's Eastern Caribbean time, right?
Correct.
So does that mean that's going to be 4 p.m. for us?
No, it's 5 o'clock. Apparently it's that time of year where all the Caribbean times are now in sync.
Daylight saving time.
Yeah, because a lot of them don't do it and we insist on it.
Okay. So Caribbean United Against Gender-Based Violence is presenting a virtual panel called Gender-Based Violence, Violence Against Women or Intra-Family Violence. Why do words matter?
Correct. All right, so let me tell you about this program a little bit. So Caribbean United Against Gender-Based Violence is the umbrella organization for our Me, You, Us Youth Saloon, the one that org is running, trying to facilitate youth understanding and their own design of programs against gender-based violence. And so as a part of that greater program, it involves 12 partner countries throughout the Caribbean. And as a part of our role in this umbrella organization, we are facilitating capacity building locally.
Okay.
So a part of what we're doing is engaging stakeholders in gender equality in the Bahamas, engaging with Caribbean women in leadership, looking at Equality Bahamas, the Crisis Center, the Ministry of Social Services. So engaging all of those partner organizations so that they have the ability to participate in panels like this with other stakeholders across the Caribbean to talk about gender-based violence. And the Bahamas is one of the better positioned Caribbean countries, whereas like we do have incidences of gender-based violence, but because we are New Providence, which has the largest community, is slightly more developed than a lot of our Caribbean neighbors. We don't have grave issues we don't have the number of incidences of grave issues like our Caribbean counterparts, things like child-based marriages. We don't have those sorts of issues, but we still have very much domestic based issues, intimate partner violence, and those sort of inequities coming from gender roles.
Absolutely. Let's quickly, let me give a definition of gender-based violence, unless you have a definition already.
Gender-based violence is essentially violence that is attributed to a person based on their actual gender or their gender identity. And so it's a really broad umbrella of activities, and it can be things from like physical violence. It can be sorts of restrictions that are limited to a person, intimate partner violence. So sometimes it's physical, psychological, it's
Or
financial.
financial, yeah.
So it has an incredible range. But what makes it gender-based violence is that the victim is usually targeted based on their gender or their gender identity. So that becomes their level of vulnerability.
Right. And so typically with financial violence, we think of women who go to work, come home, the male partner or the dominant partner, right, demands the paycheck, right? They may even go to the place of work and tell the boss, pay her in cash.
Correct. Or this money goes to that person's bank account.
Right.
Or in cases, and I want to bring this one up because it's something that's become glorified in recent society. I've known incidences of women who have not worked and who have had, like, their partner have had exclusive management of the finances, and their decisions are they are subject to their partner's authority.
And it's not that they don't work. They don't work outside the home.
Out of the home,
Right.
correct.
Because they are producing.
Correct.
Right? And even decisions like what type of feminine hygiene products
Is not
you're
their choice,
allowed. Right.
correct.
Is not your choice. And I want to say that I know of instances of men, not as many as women, of course, right? Like I think the percentages are much smaller. But I know a couple of instances of men who have experienced that financial violence, right? And the woman has said, he ain't gonna do nothing because he is man. And he ain't, right, like, because he ain't gonna tell nobody. Basically,
Right.
he's not gonna tell anybody I doing this to him because he'll be
Correct.
too shamed.
Absolutely. And that is a very big issue, and it's not something I want to skip over at all.
Yeah.
These violences definitely affect men, but because of our society does not highlight them as men issues, men are often afraid to discuss what it is that women do. They can't go to the authorities. They're afraid not even to be taken seriously, and there aren't obvious resources that support them. So like, what do you do as a male in this instance?
Before we get to a couple of calls, I want to give this example as well. I think it popped up on social media. And so I'm watching people talk about it, and they're talking about the pay wage differences. And a man says, well, men are in the construction field are doing more strenuous work, and that's why they get paid more money. And then another guy comes into the conversation and says, hold on, but nurses, they are lifting bodies all the time. I mean, they're doing a comparable amount of strenuous physical labor
Right.
all the time. So that's not an appropriate comparison.
And it's also not even a fair comparison when we talk about like what work is required, because there are things that are emotionally laborious that we have to do that people don't account for. Like a person who is a teacher, that person is managing stress all day, like regardless of gender. You are interacting with 30 persons on average for about 6 hours a day. That is very taxing. And although you might not be lifting and throwing, what that takes away from you and what it requires to recover is laborious. And you should not be compared to somebody who has to lift 150 pounds several times a day. That's not a compare. That's apples and watermelon. Like that's not even the same playing field.
Absolutely. And this is why we need to have these conversations, because it's not about, oh, I'm doing more work than you. It's
Right.
recognizing that this type of work that you do is difficult and strenuous, and you should be compensated adequately and appropriately for this.
For your
and,
work.
and you over here, it's a totally different type of work, but it is also strenuous and complicated and difficult, and also requires appropriate level of compensation.
Correct.
Absolutely. So let's get to the call lines for a second. Good morning, caller. Sorry to keep you so long. You are on the clock. You ain't still there, hey, caller. No, I ain't sorry about that, caller. Producer, let's go to another call. Caller, you still there? Oh, man, I am so sorry, caller. That is okay. I mean, I apologize. It's not okay. I'm going to eat my words. I got a couple more texts here. Text says, you don't want to use a public restroom. Trust me, these people so nasty. There's much more. We already mess up this planet now. We plan on leaving one Click bottle and one KFC box on the moon because some of y'all nasty like that. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all so lated. KB done wrote this song about 10 to 15 years ago. We taking rake and scrape to space. They already got them little boat roach on the moon. A clothesline already been on the moon. Y'all late, man. But KB is good. That's how y'all didn't know, because he was extra clean. See, the Bahamians he take with him to space had social responsibility.
Oh, okay, is that what happened?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that text. Another text. Erin, why everything is about violating women, trying to make criminals out of men. If I have a bladder problem, I have to do what is natural. Tell your guests stop. Erin, you want to talk about gender-based violence, yet you guys have yet to discuss the woman kidnapping boys and got probation. Ask your guests about that. Hypocrites.
No. That's a really good one. In fact, I was having a conversation with my son the other day about that. I think we don't have enough information about this incident, because she did make a comment, something about, and I'm paraphrasing here. She said something to the effect of, I won't in the future allow something to make me carry out these sorts of actions. And I had questions. I was like, what did these 3 children who had nothing to do with you, unaffiliated with you, what could they have possibly done that would have triggered you to react to them? So I do have questions about that incident. But that's not that is the exception. Like, that is not an incident that happens with any sort of prevalence in this country. That is not necessarily policy related. So we're not talking about individual issues. We're talking about broader issues.
Right. That's a wonderful point. We're talking about broader issues. But secondly, the point I made last week was that this case is particular and requires professional intervention.
Correct.
From what I have gathered from the case, the individual may have lost a child.
Right.
And a grown child, so maybe not a toddler, but she may have lost a child. So when you reference the statement that she made and ask, what could these little boys have done? Just being alive.
Right.
Right, and not, and we want to be very careful how we talk about it. And that's the next thing, Texter. The reason that I'm not talking about it is not because I'm a part of some grand conspiracy to protect women and to destroy men, but because this is a particular case. It's a very sensitive case because those little boys still exist. and they is listen to the radio. And why y'all want us to talk up all day business as well as her business?
Well, the thing is, like, this is not a model. This is not a pattern of behavior. This is
Right.
an isolated incident. And to spend all of this time talking about a single isolated incident that can be resolved that's not helping anybody here. Let's talk about things that have a pattern that exists that we can actually resolve collectively, that helps everyone collectively.
And I think there is a comparison of this particular incident with a pattern of behavior, right? Like why you don't treat this woman the same way you treat all these men. And there's just not enough context or information.
But also not calling names. Like that is one
Yeah.
single woman that we would have to isolate in this situation. We're not talking about one man. We're talking about behaviors.
Absolutely. And let me show you something. Ain't nobody trying to make criminals out of men, you know. I'm going to be honest with you, Texter. I need you to really think about this. Don't let that spirit of combativeness and confrontationalism just make you jump up and say this. Consider what we are saying.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to criminalize men. What we're asking is, why do men, quote unquote, whip it out and urinate in public spaces with such ease and lack of regard for people who could be in the area? If you know you have a urinary problem and you may not be able to hold it, to be honest with you, that's a you problem that you were aware of before you left your house, and you need to have a contingency plan. I should not be forced to look at your member because you have a problem that you are aware of. Now, I can help you by joining the lobby to
Right.
create more public bathrooms.
To resolve this.
That's what I could do.
No, because you know what? On a similar topic, and this is what I want people.
Okay, yeah. Go on.
This is where I want people to understand that, like, this is not about an individual. And I'm going to say this, I once saw a man on the side of the road. He thought he was hidden, but he was partially exposed. He was relieving himself on the side of the road. And when I saw him, the way that he was turned, and I saw what he was doing, I thought about, like, why do homeless people not have an opportunity to have intimate relationships? Like, I thought about that from a policy level. Like, as an intimate relationship, something that should only be accessible to somebody who owns a house or who is not homeless. Like, this is what I thought about. So we're not trying to make victims of people. We're looking at it from a policy level. But I want this texter to think about, why are you so triggered by somebody bringing up bad behavior? Like, nobody's calling you out on a thing, but I want you to reflect on that a little bit. Why, when somebody's talking about a behavior that is not appropriate, why are you triggered by this?
Yeah, and and in fact, I can be honest with you guys. I know we're out of time. We're getting right to the end of the show, right? I've experienced this about 3 or 4 times over the last 2 weeks. And I had to explain to this gentleman, if you want to urinate on a generator, on a piece of external electrical equipment, then you go right ahead and you do that, sir. There is nothing I could do to stop you. But perhaps you shouldn't.
Maybe not.
Absolutely. Listen, this has been a hot show. We started late, and I'm sorry it's ending late. We are out of here. It is 11 a.m., and it's a little past 11 a.m. So thank you for tuning in to On the Clock with Erin Greene this morning. Stay tuned to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Levon Miller is up next. Have a great day, Bahamas.